Let the doors be open. Que l'on ouvre les portes. Statements by members, déclaration de députés. The Honourable Member for Guelph.
Mr. Speaker, today is the first ever I Read Canadian Day. This initiative was created as a collaboration between the Canadian Children's Book Centre, the children's author and my good friend Eric Walters, Canadian Society for Children's Authors, Illustrators and Performers, and the Ontario Library Association. The goal is simple. We want people to buy, borrow, read, and talk about Canadian books, whether they're English, French, or in Indigenous languages, and can be in print, e-format, and accessible formats. We're challenging the nation to read Canadian for 15 minutes today, to share their experience at their library, their school, and with their family and friends, or on social media with the hashtag #IReadCanadian. This celebration of Canadian literature for young people will leave a lifelong impact on Canadian youth and help transform an entire generation into lifelong learners. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Bravo. Honourable Member for Regina Wascana.
Mr. Speaker, I invite everyone to come visit the RCMP Heritage Centre in my home city of Regina, Saskatchewan. Located on the front lawn of the RCMP Academy, the Mounties Historic Training Facility, the mission of the RCMP Heritage Centre is to bring to life one of Canada's oldest and most iconic stories, the story of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. This story of our Mounties is a national story. It belongs to everyone. Visitors to the RCMP Heritage Centre can explore a variety of interactive exhibits and rare historical artifacts that bring to life over a century of our RCMP history, from the formation of the Northwest Mounted Police in 1873 to the modern-day Mountie. I would like to thank the many volunteers, donors, and staff of the RCMP Heritage Centre whose work continues to shed light on this important chapter of our shared history.
For Etobicoke Centre.
Days ago, we lost Christy Blatchford, one of Canada's most prominent writers and journalists. Born in the town of Rouyn-Noranda in northwestern Quebec, Christy wrote for the Toronto Star, the Toronto Sun, the National Post, and the Globe and Mail. She broke down barriers for women in sports reporting. She became an award-winning author and a war and courtroom correspondent. Christy always wrote with a unique balance of toughness and tenderness. From time to time, I had the privilege of debating the news of the day with Christy on News Talk 1010 radio. She was relentless in her pursuit of the facts and the truth to help us understand the issues that we face every day. I respected that in her, but I also respected her courage to unabashedly share her point of view, even when it was controversial. Maybe that's why News Talk 1010 morning host John Moore recently said, "There are certain figures you turn to make sense of the world around you." Christy was one of those. I could not agree more. Christy, it'll be a lot harder making sense of the world around us without you.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-des-Mille-Îles. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the week of scholarship. The theme is our acts are to improve our success. Everyone should do more, including we, parliamentarians, to contribute to success in education. I want to highlight essential investments that teachers make every single day, every member of the staff at the school, including support staff. As a principal for 20 years, today I have a thought for young people who are having difficulties, for whom every school day is sometimes a burden. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Laval-des-Îles. On February 14th, almost all of us celebrated Valentine's Day in one way or another. This day isn't just for lovebirds. It's an opportunity for happiness, forgiveness, and unity to revive joy, laughter, and cheer in the hearts of all human beings. To love is not simply to look fondly upon one another, it is to look all together in the same direction.
Minded that love is caring about each other, be united and make out of our diversity a strong tie that holds us together forever and make Canada even better, because better is always possible. As no one is left behind in Canada, one for all and all for one. Joyeux Saint-Valentin.
Happy Valentine's Day to all Canadians and all communities throughout Canada and throughout the entire world. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Calgary, Shepherd.
I rise to pay respects to one of Canada's leading public intellectuals, Edmonton-born and Fairview-raised, with an academic career spanning McGill, Harvard, and finally the University of Toronto. A clinician by profession, and with over 2 million copies sold of his self-help book, one of Canada's best-selling authors. He's comfortable quoting Jung, Nietzsche, Solzhenitsyn, and his Bible lectures have struck a nerve with a secular generation detached from its roots. It is said a nation's treasure is its scholars. Mr. Speaker, Jordan B. Peterson is one of Canada's treasures. Rule 10 is to be precise in your speech, so let me be judicious. During his talks, he parsed his words carefully, imparting wisdom for introspective life. His battle with depression reminds us that being sick doesn't mean you are weak. He went to rehab to treat his addiction to anti-anxiety medication after his wife Tammy's terminal cancer diagnosis. He spoke frankly of his autoimmune illness and the life changes he had to make. His most recent health setbacks are a reminder of our mortality, regardless of fame or fortune. I invite all members to join me in wishing Dr. B. Peterson a speedy recovery.
The Honourable Member for Cape Breton-Penso.
Mr. Speaker, it's with great sadness that I rise in this House today to remember Al Pace, a community leader Cape Breton lost last week at 81 years of age. Al was known for many things, a committed and loving family man being one of them. Al was a founding member of Sidco Fuels and Scotia Propane. Now, he knew the importance of giving back to community. His work ethic and dedication never ceased. In fact, even after his retirement, he showed up every day for work. Al served on many boards, including the Kiwanis Club, the Shriners, the Cape Breton Regional Hospital Foundation, and the United Way. He was the very embodiment of a rising tide raises all ships. On behalf of the Cape Breton-Canso constituents and members of this House, I wish to offer my sincere condolences to his 4 generations of family and his loved ones. Al was an inspiration to all and will be deeply missed. It is my hope that we can carry forward Al's community-first virtues for betterment of the province, the region, and our country. Thank you.
L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Argenteuil, La Petite Nation. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to announce that the artist Marie Lauzon from La Chute has once again managed to stand out on the international stage. Ms. Lauzon won a bronze medal at the 50th International Expo of Quebec's Circle of Painters and Sculptors, held last September at the Fondus Abbey near Cognac in France. Her abstract piece, Devotion and Determination, won over the jury, made up of well-known players on France's cultural scene. Furthermore, 4 of Ms. Lauzon's other abstract works are currently on display in Montreal's Convention Centre. The citizens of Argenteuil La Petite Nation and I are proud of you. And we are proud that you make us all shine. You are now part of my writing's ambassadors.
Member for Souris Moose Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to recognize Congenital Heart Disease Day in Canada, which took place last week on February 14th. Congenital heart disease, or CHD, affects over 250,000 Canadians across our country. It is the world's leading birth defect, with roughly 1 in 90 Canadian children being diagnosed with some form of it each year, including holes in the heart, valve defects, stenosis of arteries and veins, and much more. Thankfully, with technological and medical advancements, today about 90% of these children survive to adulthood. There is no cure for CHD, which means access to specialized care is essential, particularly for Canadian adults. Research on adult CHD has not reached the same level of other areas of heart disease, even though it has the potential to have a huge impact. I encourage all Canadians to follow the mission of the Canadian Congenital Heart Alliance. We need to spread the word about the growing population of survivors and help them get the care and support they need to live long and healthy lives.
The Honourable Member for Dorval, Lachine, La Salle.
Celebration of Black History Month, I wish to honor Florence Kennedy, a lawyer and a pioneer in the women's movement. Flo has been neglected by history, including her very important role in the legalization of abortion. There is no real acknowledgement of this Black woman's extraordinary struggle in the fight for all women. At a crucial time in the 1960s, using ideas from the Black Power movement, Flo shaped the feminist movement into what it is today. She organized protests, boycotts, and fought pro bono for social justice issues in court. 60 years ago, Flo pinpointed what we only started speaking about recently, that the feminist movement cannot ignore interlocking forms of oppression. To no avail, Flo tried to organize interracial feminist organizations that would address these very critical issues. She was one of the most vocal, blunt voices in the feminist and Black Power movements, and once said, there aren't too many people ready to die for racism. They'll kill for racism, but they won't die for racism. Thank you.
The honourable member for Edmonton West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to honour Joan Carr, Edmonton Catholic School Superintendent, who we lost to cancer this month. Pioneering early learning programs, improving Indigenous learning, and helping new Canadians enter the school system were all part of Joan's 14 years as head of the Edmonton Catholic Schools. In 2017, Joan was recognized as Canada's top school superintendent. An elegant and attentive person, Joan never lost the heart of a teacher despite her exacting responsibilities as superintendent of over 44,000 students. She modeled servant leadership to an extraordinary degree, empowering all those who work for her to realize their talents, and focus always on supporting parents in their role as the primary educators of their children. Joan was gifted with the support of her husband, Kevin Carr, himself a legend in the educational leadership. She was a loving face of Jesus the teacher for all those she served. Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter the glory of God, Joan. Thank you.
The honourable member for Regina Louvain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over 100,000 men and women in Alberta and Saskatchewan remain out of work. This crisis was created by this government's malicious indifference towards the energy sector. But there's hope on the horizon in the name of a $20 billion mining project that would see 7,000 direct jobs created and countless more in spin-off and support work. Which is why it's so confusing that members of the Prime Minister's own caucus, I'll point out just two, the member from Kingston and the Islands and the member from Toronto Danforth, are actively promoting a petition calling for the cancellation of this job-creating project. These reckless actions will not only cost our country thousands of jobs, but will tarnish our country's reputation again as a place unwilling to move projects forward. Brutal. My people in Regina Louvain are looking towards this Prime Minister, hoping he'll stand in his place today and promise thousands of Western Canadians that this government will create this job-creating project. Tech Frontier project needs to be approved now, and we're hoping he won't show the same weak leadership that he showed in this House yesterday.
The honourable member for North Island, Powell River.
Mr. Speaker, I am scared. History has shown us too many times that when change happens, all too often people target who they see as other. When anyone defines a person or a group of people as other than, we forget the connection of our human family. All people want an environment that sustains us. All people want safety for their community and their loved ones. All people want to be heard and seen for the realities they are experiencing. In my riding and across Canada, pressure is rising to address Indigenous rights and title, to build an economy that will provide living wages while protecting the environment. I am calling on all Canadians to put down the weapons of racist language. I am calling on all people to not be silent, but to remind one another we can have a difference of opinion, but we should not spread hate. As a mother of Indigenous children and grandchildren, they are precious to me. I am calling on all of us to keep all of us safe.
The honourable member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister gave the Minister of Heritage the mandate to look at national policy on museums to make sure that people can discover history. And in my riding, I have Expo Rare, which is a museum dedicated to railways. The Standing Heritage Committee recommended that it be given the status of National Museum in 2007, but nothing has happened since. Changing the law is a great opportunity to pay tribute to all those who worked to build railways in Quebec and Canada. The first meeting of the committee's work is going to happen today. I hope that the members will meet and have a great first meeting and not forget that your country was built thanks to the railways. Rail transportation is still important, as we have been able to observe recently. The Honourable Member for Portneuf, Jacques Cartier. While we were living here in Canada, a crisis got worse, and the Prime Minister went to meet an African president as part of his charm offensive to get that president's vote. I would like to remind our Prime Minister that this foreign leader supports the criminalization of homosexuality in his country. Existing laws were used to arrest people from LGBTQ communities while they visited loved ones in hospital, led to brutal repression by local police, and were used to deny access to medical care. This situation is dire when we see our Prime Minister ready to sacrifice human rights in a bid to get a seat at the United Nations. He has no plan to solve the current rail crisis. He's supporting a foreign leader who violates LGBTQ rights. This is hypocrisy from this man of the theater who is two-faced. Such inconsistency is nothing new from this Liberal government. The environment isn't being respected, money's being wasted, and LGBTQ rights are being sold out. Thank you.
For Halifax.
Mr. Speaker, this year marks the 100th anniversary of Kin Canada, the nation's largest all-Canadian service club organization. Over 6,000 members belong to more than 400 kinsmen, Canad, and kin clubs across Canada, dedicating themselves to serving the community's greatest need. Since its founding by Hal Rogers in 1920, the association has contributed more than $1 billion to Canadian causes, communities, and individuals in need, as well as to disaster relief efforts beyond our borders. Kin Canada's repertoire of good deeds includes supporting the fight against cystic fibrosis, having raised more than $47.6 million for research and patient care since 1964. Awarding bursaries to Canadian students from coast to coast to coast, and spreading cheer on its National Day of Kindness. Mr. Speaker, I invite all members to join me in expressing our heartfelt gratitude to all of these inspiring individuals who uplift their communities in a spirit of cooperation, inclusiveness, and compassion. Thank you, Kin Canada.
Oral questions, question orale, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I quote, we need to work together to get the police working together in all provinces. A calendar or timeline has to be set. I'm not talking weeks, I'm talking days. It's time something was done. Who said this? Quebec Premier François Legault. So, Mr. Speaker, was Mr. Legault right to say this? Or is he disqualified from participating in future federal provincial meetings? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. We take this crisis seriously. It's unacceptable that so many Canadians are facing shortages and layoffs. We know that we must make every effort to peacefully resolve this worrisome situation, and that is exactly what we intend to do. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He should do something about it. Exactly. After 2 weeks of inaction and weakness, CN Rail and Via Rail have announced that they are laying off nearly 1,500 workers because of these non-stop blockades across Canada. 1,500 men and women who have to look their families in the eye and tell them that they were laid off. They still have bills to pay. So can the Prime Minister tell them on what day will the blockades come down?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. working extremely hard, doing absolutely everything we can to resolve these situations peacefully. We know that an overly aggressive approach like the one proposed by the Leader of the Official Opposition will only lead to more challenges down the road. But I do agree with the Leader of the Opposition on one thing. This situation is unacceptable in the fact that it's hitting Canadians so hard, facing layoffs, facing shortages. That's why we are doing everything we can to resolve this peacefully. We will exhaust every effort to resolve this peacefully.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister still refuses to take any kind of action. Now, these radical activists have erected these blockades because they want to shut down our resource centre. Protesters 4,000 kilometres away want to cancel billions of dollars worth of resource projects, one supported by the elected council of the Wet'suwet'en and even the British Columbia NDP government. This is not a way to grow the economy. The Prime Minister is showing incredible weakness in refusing to do anything about this. So once again, can he tell people who are just laid off on what day they can get back to work?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Continuing to do everything we can to resolve this situation peacefully. That is what Canadians expect of their government. We understand how difficult this is for so many people who are facing shortages, who are facing layoffs right now, but we know we need to resolve this in a way that won't create more problems months from now over the coming years as well. That is why we are taking every step necessarily to resolve this constructively, peacefully, and rapidly, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear. Leader of the Opposition.
Except, Mr. Speaker, they're not doing everything. They could actually be moving to take these blockades down. The reality is that the Prime Minister is trying to make a link between reconciliation and a group of radical protesters who have nothing to do with the First Nations affected by this decision. These are groups whose self-professed goals are to shut down all development in our energy sector. They are anti-free market, and they are ignoring the science of these approvals. So, once again, will the Prime Minister take action and tell these out-of-work Canadians on what day they can return to work?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, we understand this is an unacceptable situation. Canadians are hurting. Canadians are facing layoffs. This is something we need to resolve, and we need to resolve it not just for today and tomorrow. We need to resolve it for the weeks and months to come. Unfortunately, the approach that the Leader of the Opposition is proposing would not ensure jobs and stability for Canadians in the future. That's why we on this side of the aisle are focused on resolving it peacefully. That's what we will do.
Hear, hear. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Only to this Prime Minister standing up for the rule of law somehow aggressive behavior from a government. It's the bare minimum that Canadians expect from their elected officials. Now, yesterday there were suggestions that some of the blockades might come down if the RCMP withdrew from certain sites. Now, when asked about this, the minister said that they were considering that. So why is the government considering directing the RCMP not to uphold the law, but ruling out asking them to enforce the rule of law?
Speaker, Canadians understand that this is a very serious situation, one that holds the path of reconciliation and partnerships on one hand, and the other side.
I hate to interrupt the Honourable Prime Minister, but I'm having a hard time hearing his answer.
Good point, Speaker.
I think we're ready. Please proceed.
And of course, this is a situation facing many Canadians who are dealing with shortages, or dealing with challenges to their own disrupted lives, but also possible layoffs. That's why we are focused on real issues that will matter to Canadians, a real solution forward, not rhetorical games or playing short-term politics, as the members of the opposition continue to do.
The Honourable Député de Belleuil.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, the escalation in job losses has begun in the riding of Belleuil-Chambly. Companies are saying the situation is getting grave. There's a danger of running out of stock. If you're interested in the economic consequences, I would encourage you to speak to the Quebec Premier. The Premier knows that empty rhetoric changes nothing. That's our experience. The First Nations have their own leaders. Their question is, does Canada have one? If the Prime Minister wants to open up a dialogue, what is the nature of the forum for this open discussion? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we continue to engage directly with various leaders in First Nations. We know that there are a number of groups within the various Indigenous groups, and we are engaging with as many as we can. We recognize how complex this situation is. It's very difficult for business people, for Canadians, for people dealing with layoffs. We are going to continue to work on resolving this situation peacefully and quickly. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Well, not much progress has been made. If the government had a solution, there should be a discussion first and foremost about the usefulness of withdrawing the RCMP from Wet'suwet'en territory. Has the government considered the idea of withdrawing the RCMP, who are perceived as an intrusion, and replacing them with an Indigenous law enforcement body of their choosing? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. That's a good idea, and it's one among many that we're discussing and considering with BC. It's an issue that is for the police forces to decide and the provinces to decide where the RCMP works as a provincial police force. But that's precisely the type of discussion and thinking that we are having with a view to peacefully resolving this situation. The Honourable Member for Burnaby South. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have a national crisis, and it shows a lack of leadership.
Concrete proposals to solve and de-escalate the situation. Now, we've got 3 proposals to help de-escalate the situation. First, the Prime Minister must meet with the hereditary chiefs in Wet'suwet'en. Yep. Secondly, the Prime Minister should appoint a special mediator to facilitate the conversation. And thirdly, the RCP need to stand down to allow these conversations and dialogues to happen. So will the Prime Minister meet with the hereditary chiefs and appoint a special mediator?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Indigenous Relations has been engaged closely with the Wet'suwet'en hereditary leadership, has indicated many times that she would be willing to meet with them at any given moment. The Wet'suwet'en are continuing to reflect on this, but we are impressing upon them the urgency with which they really need to engage in finding paths forward for the benefits of Canadians, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, who are being sorely affected by the shortages, by the disruptions, and indeed by the layoffs.
For Burnaby South.
Thank you. The Liberal government has already spent $4.5 billion to buy a pipeline. And to expand it, it could cost over $13 billion. Recent polls show that when the price goes up, support goes down because people understand there are better ways of spending this taxpayer money. Does the Prime Minister agree that there are better ways of investing taxpayer money to create quality jobs and reduce emissions? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we approved the Trans Mountain Expansion Project because it's in the public interest, because we recognize that we are still a society and a world that relies on oil products. They need to be extracted and transported in a responsible, sustainable, and safe way. We also know that we're going to plow all of the profits from this project into the green transition. That's a positive way of continuing to fight climate change.
Or Oak Ridge's Richmond Hill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the illegal blockades have been in place for over 2 weeks. This is a national crisis. Commuters can't get to work, producers can't get their goods to market, and people are losing their jobs. The Prime Minister's weak leadership has forced Premier Moe to convene a special meeting of all the provincial premiers to discuss a way forward. Why is the Prime Minister abdicating his job to the premiers.
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I was pleased to speak with Premier Moe just minutes ago to talk about the work that we are doing all together, federal and provincial levels, to engage with this solution, to recognize that this is a challenge that has its origins in BC, but have issues and repercussions right across the country, upon which we must be working together. Every Premier understands the need to resolve this quickly but peacefully, and that is what we are working on together.
That's right.
The Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians were hoping the Prime Minister would present a plan yesterday to bring down the illegal blockades that are costing jobs, causing Canadians real hardships, and are also making a mockery of our laws. Instead, they got weak and ineffective words. Even the premiers are unimpressed with the Prime Minister's pathetic response. In fact, Premier Scott Moe has called and initiated an emergency call with other premiers to address the crisis. So when will the Prime Minister step up, do his job, and put an end to these dangerous and illegal barricades?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I just said, I was pleased to speak just minutes ago with Premier Moe to discuss the concerted approach by both the federal and provincial governments to ensure that this national challenge is responded both at regional levels and the federal level. We will continue to work to resolve the situation, which is extremely difficult for Canadians right across the country. We know, however, and we are all premiers and Prime Minister united in the fact that we need to resolve this quickly and peacefully.
The Honourable Member for Richmond, Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, since the start of the railway blockade crisis, the Prime Minister has shown weak leadership. And now the Quebec Premier is getting exasperated. François Legault said yesterday that the government was losing control and we're on the brink of some serious problems. Mr. Speaker, if the Prime Minister doesn't get why urgent action is needed, could he take a bit more responsibility and show a minimum of leadership and tell us when he's going to come up with a plan with a timeline? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Canadians expect us to resolve this situation, but in a sustainable fashion, not just short term. That's why we're working hard to resolve the situation peacefully. Solutions like those proposed by the Conservatives would merely increase the temperature and jeopardize our economy for months to come. We know that we need to do everything we can to resolve this situation peacefully. That's the best way to support Canadians who are so concerned about their jobs and their daily lives. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Well, if there's a shortage of propane, there are going to be problems in Canada. There's nothing for Via Rail, for CN workers, nothing for the 350 workers in Lac-Mégantic, nothing for farmers, nothing for people whose propane is being rationed. These disastrous consequences are occurring while the Quebec Premier is saying that if nothing is done, all the provinces are going to have to step in to fill the void. Will the Prime Minister recognize that his lack of leadership will cause thousands of job losses in Canada? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, to avoid months and even years of instability, we want to resolve this situation peacefully. The Conservative approach would raise the temperature through the use of force. That is not a solution. We will work with the premiers, including Premier Legault, to resolve this situation peacefully. That is what Canadians expect.
Member for Foothills.
Mr. Speaker, the illegal rail blockades are yet another blockade and another barrier for Canadian grain farmers, and the situation is a crisis. There are 19 ships off Prince Rupert and another 50 ships off the Port of Vancouver, many of them waiting to be loaded with grain. Every week that the rails are blockaded with illegal blockades costs Canadian farmers $50 million. Wow. We are more than 4 weeks in, and Canadian farmers already hit with the Liberal carbon tax are seeing their bills mounting. When will this Prime Minister safely remove these illegal blockades and get our commodities moving again?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our priority is resolving this situation peacefully because we know that is the long-term solution that is needed for this country. It is essential that we work together across provinces to bring down the temperature and to bring down these barricades, but to do it in a way that is peaceful, that is concrete actions that is going to resolve this situation. That is what we are doing. The raising of the rhetoric and temperature by the members of the official opposition is not serving to help any of the Canadians who are facing layoffs or disruptions in their daily lives.
Member for Chilliwack Hope.
Protesters continue to shut down our railways, blockade our ports, and target our border crossings. 1,500 workers have already been laid off, and thousands more are at risk of losing their jobs. Reserve supplies of home heating oil, propane, and chlorine for water treatment are running critically low, putting the health and safety of Canadians at risk. Will the Prime Minister finally show some leadership and demand that the court injunctions against these illegal blockades be enforced, or will he continue to embolden the mob that is giving the courts the Trudeau salute?
I'm sorry, I got up to point something out, but I realized that it was a historic reference. I'll leave it at that. Everyone knows why I got up. The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are focused on helping the thousands of Canadians, tens of thousands of Canadians who've had their lives disrupted, that are facing shortages, that are facing layoffs. We will continue to work to help them both in the short term and in the long term by resolving this situation peacefully. We will continue to work to exhaust every option to resolve it peacefully because we know this is a situation deeply concerning to Canadians right across the country.
That's right. On reflecting on that, I just want to remind the honourable members that the rules state that you cannot do indirectly what you can't do directly. So,
the honourable member for Avignon-La-Métis, Matane-Matapédia. Mr. Speaker, the railway blockade crisis was triggered by the RCMP. They're the ones who stoked the fire by ordering their officers to arrest peaceful Wet'suwet'en demonstrators. They're the ones who ordered their officers to use maximum force, including the use of snipers, to disperse demonstrators. Snipers, Mr. Speaker. You can't make this stuff up. To calm the crisis, will the Prime Minister... I'll interrupt the member just for a few seconds, please.
I'm hearing her. She's at the other end, and the noise is getting rather loud.
I'll allow her to continue her question. Please continue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To calm the crisis, will the Prime Minister, 1, call on the RCMP to withdraw from Wet'suwet'en territory, and 2, apologize for the overzealousness of the RCMP? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I appreciate this opportunity the member has given me to remind people that in BC, there is no provincial police force. The RCMP act as the provincial police. It's the equivalent of the OPP or the Sûreté du Québec in BC. And it is the responsibility of the province to oversee RCMP conduct. Obviously, there's a federal component, but they are acting as a provincial police force in this case. The Honourable Member for Abitibi, James Bay, Nunavik, AU. Mr. Speaker, the crisis worsens with every passing moment. I was astounded yesterday to hear the minister saying she was planning to meet with Wet'suwet'en demonstrators by month's end. It's not a matter of weeks, Mr. Speaker, not even of days. It's a matter of hours. Action is needed now. Will the Prime Minister tell her to convene a meeting immediately? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Indigenous Affairs is willing to meet with Wet'suwet'en leaders at any time. The challenge is that those leaders are not available to meet right now. We are going to continue working on organizing that meeting. We're doing everything we can to resolve this situation peacefully, and we will continue to look for every possible way. But our willingness is there. We want this resolved quickly and peacefully. The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, for the PM and all members' information, the government can give orders to the RCMP. After denying this, the Minister of Public Safety finally admitted it to the House yesterday. These illegal blockades must stop. Surely there are ways of ending them without disturbing the peace. It takes leadership, which the Prime Minister is woefully lacking in. Why hasn't he instructed his minister to put an end to this national crisis? The Honourable Prime Minister. Once again, Mr. Speaker, this is an opportunity to remind everyone what the facts are. The blockade in Belleville is the responsibility of the Ontario Provincial Police to deal with. Obviously, we're coordinating between the federal government and the provinces. There's a lot of work to be done, but the federal government or any government does not have the right to order the police force of another jurisdiction to do whatever. That's part of our democracy.
Yesterday, the Minister of Public Safety conceded that under the RCMP Act, he does in fact have the authority to provide direction to the RCMP. When the Prime Minister finally, will the Prime Minister finally show some real leadership and instruct his Public Safety Minister to direct the RCMP to enforce the law and safely end these illegal blockades?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, politicians don't order the police around in operational matters. That is a well-established principle in our democracy. We are working with all partners across the country to resolve this situation peacefully and rapidly. That is what Canadians expect, because Canadians are hurting, Mr. Speaker, from disruptions to shortages to layoffs. This situation is unacceptable, and that is why we are doing everything we can to resolve it as quickly as possible.
Honourable Member for Carleton.
Well, the Prime Minister ironically now says that he doesn't order police officers around. That'll be news to Mark Norman. Today at Finance Committee, I asked the Finance Minister, who's supposed to be in charge of the money, how much these illegal blockades are costing the Canadian economy every day. He didn't know. Does the Prime Minister?
Yes. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we recognize that this is a time of hardship for Canadians, with shortages, with disruptions in their daily lives to commuters, with layoffs as well, Mr. Speaker. This is a situation that needs to end. It needs to end peacefully, but it needs to end quickly. And the approach that we're taking is to look to resolve this in a peaceful manner so that we don't continue to see disruptions like this in the coming months and years.
Well, Member for Carleton.
So the Prime Minister, like his Finance Minister, does not know how much this illegal blockade is costing our Canadian economy in terms of dollars. We know today that 1,500 rail workers have lost their jobs. They went home and looked their families in the eye and said, I lost my job. So can the Prime Minister tell us how many Canadians across the country in total have lost their jobs so far as a result of these illegal blockages?
Mr. Speaker, far too many Canadians are facing disruptions, facing shortages, and yes, facing layoffs as well. This is the...
Answer the question for one.
Right Honourable Prime Minister, I think we're ready.
Mr. Speaker, the very real challenges and suffering faced by Canadians in this situation is why we are so resolved to solve this situation peacefully and quickly. This is something that we need to resolve for the stability and the opportunities for Canadians across this country. That is what we will absolutely do.
Honourable Member for Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, our country and this government is facing a crisis. The Prime Minister tells us that no relationship is more important to him than that with Indigenous peoples. But the protests we are seeing tell us that Indigenous people have had enough of this government's empty promises. The Wet'suwet'en people have been patient. They waited decades for the federal government to meet with them in good faith on the question of their title and rights. Will this Prime Minister travel to Wet'suwet'en territory and personally sit down with the hereditary chiefs?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs have been engaged closely with the province on issues of title and rights. That table is proceeding in a very positive way. They've also engaged directly with the federal government on issues of child and family services in very fruitful discussions over the past few years. We will continue to engage with the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs and indeed with all Indigenous leaders across this country on the path to reconciliation, but also to look to resolve this current difficult situation for Canadians.
Honourable Member for Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's pipe dream is a nightmare for both the environment and the economy. With the Trans Mountain expansion, the Liberals gave the largest gift to an oil company in Canadian history, and the costs just keep going up. Now, the Finance Minister won't even say how much is too much. We know as the costs for TMX skyrocket, opposition to it grows too. So when will the Liberals come clean about the full cost of this pipeline, and when will they admit they were wrong to buy it in the first place?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Trans Mountain pipeline expansion is in the national interest. Getting our resources to markets other than the United States is a positive thing for our economy, positive thing for workers across the country, and indeed consumers and taxpayers across the country as well. And it is also going to be helpful for our transition and for our fight against climate change, as all the profits from the extremely profitable pipeline that will be built will be poured into the clean energy transition and invested in green solutions. That is how to manage the path forward responsibly for Canadians.
Honourable Member for Charlottetown.
Mr. Speaker, the Veteran and Family Wellbeing Fund is a crucial tool that our government has introduced which helps veterans, their families and veteran organizations across Canada. This program provides grants and contributions to organizations to conduct research and implement projects that support the well-being of veterans and their families and will have a lasting impact on the veteran community. Can the Prime Minister tell us about recent projects our government has funded through this important program?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
I want to thank the member for Charlottetown for his question and for his hard work on behalf of Canadian veterans. We announced the investment of $400,000 for Operation Entrepreneur, which will help veterans get the skills and support they need to get started in business as they transition to civilian life. We've also announced an investment of $400,000 to Good Shepherd Ministries that will support homeless veterans and those at risk of becoming homeless. We're working to ensure Canadian veterans and their families are receiving the skills and support they so deeply need and deserve.
The Honourable Member for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock.
Mr. Speaker, Conservatives stand with the Wet'suwet'en people. When it comes to Coastal GasLink, the Wet'suwet'en elected chief and councillors support this project. We recognize that self-determination and economic independence are important steps.
If I can have your attention, please. Order. 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 It's pretty bad when you can't hear the question and the heckling's coming from both sides. The Honourable Member, please continue.
Speaker, we recognize that self-determination and economic independence are important steps on the path to reconciliation. Can the Prime Minister explain how allowing activists to block the independent decision-making power of Indigenous Canadians supports reconciliation?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, reconciliation does not mean deciding who speaks for Indigenous communities. It is respecting their own leadership and respecting their disagreements within their communities as we work with them constructively. Mr. Speaker, the members opposite want to pick and choose who speaks for Indigenous communities. That is the broken way of governments past. We need to start from a place of respect and self-government, and that is what, on this side of the House, we understand. Unfortunately, it is the last thing that the people on the other side of the aisle understand.
Honourable member for Dignity, Mississippi Churchill River.
Mr. Speaker, through you I ask, does this Prime Minister think he actually knows more about what's best for Indigenous Canadians than they do themselves? The Coastal GasLink project will create hundreds of jobs, millions of investment in the local economy, and provide a path to prosperity for the communities affected. Mr. Speaker, we're talking about providing the hope of a better future. Instead of platitudes and empty promises, when will the Prime Minister support true reconciliation and allow Indigenous Canadians to prosper by participating in the LNG project?
Mr. Speaker, I was pleased to be able to stand beside Premier Horgan a number of years ago and announce the largest private sector investment in Canada's history for LNG Canada. We understand the benefits that it goes to Indigenous communities, and that's why we continue to move forward on that path. But at the same time, Mr. Speaker, it would be a grave error for the Conservatives to continue to think that they can pick and choose who speaks for Indigenous Canadians. We will continue to engage with a broad range of Indigenous choices leadership and respect their choice in terms of leadership.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, how funny to hear the Prime Minister talk about leadership because he's shown anything but over the past 2 weeks. Canadians are suffering, as are entrepreneurs. Citizens of my riding communicated with me, and they said the situation is worse than in November. They've had to put aside many propane buses. So can he tell Mr. Bergeron when these blockades will be lifted? Honourable Prime Minister, I understand completely the concerns of many Canadians about the shortages and layoffs. We know that this is a situation that must come to an end, but we have to solve this situation peacefully. What the opposition is proposing is to use force, and that is not a solution to solve the challenges that Mr. Bergeron and others are facing. We've always worked peacefully to resolve our issues and to solve challenges quickly. The Honourable for Louis Saint Laurent. Quickly, well, it's been 2 weeks of total inaction that PM talks about quickly. But unfortunately, I have to tell Mr. Bergeron that he'll have no answer to his question. However, the Prime Minister, I'd like to ask you a simple question, because he's the head of a state of a law-abiding country. Can he tell us quite something simple? Are these blockades illegal? The Right Honourable Prime Minister, given this situation, it's illegal to block a railway, but the way we solve this situation is not just as simple as what the opposition would like us to believe. We can't just use force to solve this situation. We have to solve it peacefully so that we have a resolution that is lasting for years to come. And that is our emphasis, Mr. Speaker. That's what we've chosen to do, and that is the action we're taking every day, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Ballet-Chambly. I'm perplexed, Mr. Speaker, and I hope the Prime Minister can help me. If I understood his question to my colleague earlier, the Prime Minister of Canada, who has been traveling the world for a UN Security Council seat, is said to have called the Wet'suwet'en leader and said, we can't help you. Did he say that he was refused a meeting with the Wet'suwet'en people? And if that didn't happen, when will the meeting take place? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we've worked to have meetings with the Wet'suwet'en the Minister of Indigenous Affairs has done so. Unfortunately, they're not available right now for this meeting, and that is why we are working to obtain a meeting, and we're going to continue to do so to solve this situation peacefully and quickly. The Honourable Member for Golay-Chambly. I'm almost speechless, but not quite. The Prime Minister answers the question as if he was in the opposition. He denounces economic issues and shortages. He says it's illegal, but then he says, but you have to speak to them. But is there a leadership issue here? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. To solve this situation, the Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are taking concrete action to solve this situation, and that it does include meetings between ministers and the people of Wet'suwet'en. We recognize that things are moving too slowly, especially for many Canadians that are facing shortages, blockades, and we're going to continue to do everything in our power to solve the situation peacefully.
Mr. Speaker, because of the illegal blockades, has had to lay off 500 workers. VIA has just announced 1,000 layoffs. In making that announcement, the Via Rail's CEO said in 42 years of existence, this is the first time Via has had to interrupt most of its service, all because of this Prime Minister's lack of action and weak leadership. How many more Canadian jobs have to be lost before he does his job and actually takes firm action?
Forceful solutions proposed by the members opposite will not result in better economic stability or better opportunities for Canadians. We know that the only path forward is to exhaust every possibility to resolve this situation peacefully. That is exactly what we will stay focused on doing. Elevating the temperature and going in forcefully is not going to solve this before we have resolved every step peacefully first.
The Honourable Member for New Brunswick Southwest.
Job losses from these illegal blockades are growing by the hour. Last night, CN Rail announced 450 workers will be laid off. Today, Via Rail announced another 1,000. When Canadian workers and families have their livelihoods and safety put at risk, the Prime Minister offers nothing but platitudes. If these illegal rail blockades continue, Atlantic Canada will run out of propane. Airports will run out of de-icing fluids that keep us moving in the winter. And water treatment facilities will soon lack chemical supplies that keep our drinking water safe. When will this government finally stand up for Atlantic Canada?
Good question. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
If we do not exhaust every possibility of resolving this situation peacefully, the disruptions to the Canadian economy, to hardworking Canadians and their jobs from coast to coast to coast could be massive and could last over the coming months. That is why we are focused on resolving this situation peacefully and rapidly, and will continue to do everything we can to do that, including engaging directly with all different Indigenous leaders.
The member for West Nova.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's weak leadership is hurting Nova Scotia. Acadian Sea Plants, which employs over 400 people in my riding, has run out of propane and can't ship their products to market. The Auto Port in Eastern Passage handles thousands of cars for the North American market and employs dozens of people, issued layoff notices. Even Royal Propane in Digby, a small business in West Nova, employs about 40 people supplying product, has to issue layoffs. Mr. Speaker, how many more jobs must be lost before this Prime Minister acts?
Mr. Speaker, Resolving this situation peacefully is the way we need to stay focused to get through this situation. The forceful responses that the opposition is proposing would not make things better for those workers or for the region. It would make things worse for Canadians from coast to coast to coast. That is why we are exhausting every possibility to resolve this peacefully.
The Honourable Member for Longueuil-Charlemagne. Mr. Speaker, Canada is a country of choice for the African diaspora, which is drawn to our bilingualism, economic opportunity, and top-notch higher education. Last week, the Prime Minister and several of his ministers went to Africa to develop new trade opportunities. Can the Prime Minister inform this House about the measures taken by the government to boost trade between Ethiopia and Canada? Thank you. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I'd like to thank the member for her question and for her hard work. Growing and diversifying Canada's global trade in buoyant African countries is a priority for our government. This is why Canada and Ethiopia trade totaled $170 million in 2018, and we are negotiating a foreign investment promotion and protection agreement with Ethiopia to help further boost trade and corporate investments in our two countries.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister just said he was going to resolve this in the coming months. The forestry industry in BC is in crisis. 24 mills have closed down and 10,000 workers are out of jobs, have been impacted. And now we have blockades. 80% of the product goes to mills by rail. The Prime Minister's weak leadership is going to lead to more layoffs and more hardship in my communities. When will the Prime Minister end the blockades?
We're working every day to resolve this situation peacefully and rapidly. The concern is if we were to take the forceful proposals by the Conservatives, we would actually extend the challenges faced by the Canadian economy by many months and possibly years. We need to exhaust every effort to resolve this peacefully. That is the best way to support workers across this country, businesses, and indeed Canadians who are worried about those layoffs.
The Honourable Member for Montmagny-Lizé, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister just answered one of my colleagues saying that it was illegal, I repeat, illegal for a rail blockade to occur. Can the Prime Minister tell us when he's going to ask his minister to enforce the law? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are doing everything in our power to resolve this situation peacefully. We recognize that this is an extremely difficult situation for many Canadians across the country that are facing layoffs, but we're going to do everything we can to solve this situation rapidly, which is unacceptable. Thank you.
He knows him.
Today, the Prime Minister talked about force. But the force that's required today is a strength of conviction from him to be a leader and put an end to this crisis, not the weak embarrassment that we've seen on display for the last 2 weeks. He must understand that enforcing the rule of law is his duty, and it's an inherent act of peace. Force. How long is he going to let this continue for? A week? A month? A year? Forever?
Mr. Speaker, the job of the Prime Minister is to stand up for Canadians and to protect them and their livelihoods today and well into the future. And it is that drives this government.
Ceremonial. Stand up for Canadians, not the dogs.
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the job of a Prime Minister is to stand up for Canadians today, tomorrow, next month, and next year. That is what we're focused on, and that is why searching for a peaceful resolution to this situation is the right path forward.
The Honourable Member for Châteauguay-Lacolle. Mr. Speaker, Canada is deeply concerned by the suffering of the Venezuelan people and remains firmly committed to the promotion and protection of democracy and human rights. In response to attacks from the Maduro regime against democratic rights, Canada imposed several targeted sanctions. We have condemned systemic human rights violations by the illegitimate and dictatorial Maduro regime. Can the Prime Minister inform this House about the measures taken by this government to ensure ongoing international action in favor of the Venezuelan people and the interim president, Juan Guaido? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I'd like to thank the member for Chateauguay-Laval for her question and for her hard work. Last month, I met with the interim president of Venezuela here in Ottawa. I'd like to congratulate their people for their tenacity and for their continued fight for democracy and human rights. I'm pleased to be meeting with the Lima Group tomorrow, and we encourage the international community to work together to move beyond this humanitarian and democratic crisis caused by the illegitimate President Maduro.
Kona.
Mr. Speaker, while the Liberals are failing to de-escalate the growing crisis across this country, they're creating another one for working people in my province. In Alberta alone, 19,000 people have lost their jobs in the last month. Jason Kenney's policies and cuts are hurting Albertans, but so is this government and its refusal to deliver on their promises.
Order. Order, please. The honourable member can continue, please.
Mr. Speaker, I will repeat that last bit. Jason Kenney's policies and cuts are hurting Albertans. But so is this government's refusal to deliver on their promises. They are failing on reconciliation, they are failing on the environment, and they are failing on diversifying the economy and supporting Alberta workers.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, workers in Alberta have faced a very difficult few years. We are conscious of that. That is why we've worked to build the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, which will allow access to new markets, something that Alberta has long asked for, but that was unable to have been delivered by the previous government. On top of that, we've invested in significantly more infrastructure projects over the past 5 years than the Conservatives did over 10 years. We will continue to invest in ways that benefit Alberta and indeed the entire country, because when one part of the country is facing difficulties, Canadians stand with them, and that's what we're doing with Alberta.
And that's all for today for questions.
That's all for today.
It being 3:10 p.m., pursuant to order made on Tuesday, February 18th, 2020, the House will now proceed to the taking of the deferred recorded division on the motion of M. Blanchet relating to the business of supply. Convoquez les députés.
Call in the members.
La question est la suivante.
The question is as follows.
Monsieur Blanchet, appuyé.
Mr. Blanchet, seconded by Mr. Terrien, moved that the House call on the government to increase the special employment insurance sickness benefits from 15 weeks to 50 weeks in the upcoming budget in order to support people with serious illnesses, such as cancer. All those in favor of the motion will please rise.
Monsieur Blanchet. Monsieur Blanchet. Monsieur Sainte-Marie. Monsieur Sainte-Marie. Monsieur Terrien. Monsieur Terrien. Madame Normandin. Madame Normandin. Monsieur Fortin. Monsieur Fortin. Monsieur Bergeron. Monsieur Bergeron. Monsieur Barcelou-Duval. Monsieur Barcelou-Duval. Madame Gill. Madame Gill. Madame de Bellefeuille. Madame de Bellefeuille. Madame Michaud. Madame Michaud. Madame Posé. Madame Posé. Monsieur Thériault. Monsieur Thériault. Monsieur Plamondon. Monsieur Plamondon. Madame Vignola. Madame Vignola. Madame Gaudreau. Madame Gaudreau. Madame Larouche. Madame Larouche. Monsieur Perron. Monsieur Perron. Monsieur Beaulieu. Monsieur Beaulieu. Monsieur Boudria. Monsieur Boudria. Madame Chabot. Madame Chabot. Monsieur Savard-Tremblay.